Well, we're going to do things a little bit differently for our scripture reading this morning. You can see that it is Genesis 1, and you're going to have a little bit of a role today. But before we do that, I just want to mention a brief word about the creation story that we read in Genesis. In fact, there's two creation stories. We're going to read the first. If you read Genesis 1 and 2, you'll see there's one. And then there's another that looks a lot like it, but is a little bit different in Genesis 2. We're going to do the one from Genesis 1. And as we read this, I know that sometimes it triggers some things for us because many of us have been taught that there's some sort of conflict or debate between the world of science and the world of faith when we read this. And for me, that's simply not the case. We don't read the Bible as a science textbook. We read it as a document of faith. And so we can see the poetic truth and metaphor that exists as we read this scripture that started out as an oral story 5, 6, 7,000 years ago. Who knows, maybe even more. So we're going to have a little fun with it, though, too. This is an abridged version, and I need you to help me. So there are going to come times when you see this phrase or something very close to it, and God saw that it was good. Can we say that together? And God saw that it was good. It'll be bolded, all right? On the screen. So from Genesis 1, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created humankind in God's image. In the image of God, God created them. Male and female, God created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. Thank you. I know that took a little bit of time, but it does force us to slow down a bit and recognize how much we have been gifted with. God sees that it is good. And so we go into this time of year, spring. We dare to venture outside now, whereas before we were locked in for fear of the cold. Maybe I'm speaking for myself. And we start to breathe a little deeper. We start to get reconnected with our earth. There is something intrinsically and instinctively natural for us about connecting with creation. For some of us, it's been preparing the garden recently, right? Getting our hands in the soil and getting ready to take part in this miracle of life. For some of us, it's just the simple act of beholding a sunrise or a sunset, to see the way the sun lights up the clouds and the colors paint the sky. Some of us are booking our summer vacation at the beach, and we can just imagine when we close our eyes that sea air on our skin and hear the waves crashing. And we breathe a little deeper, and we understand that God is there, and that God is good, and that creation is indeed good. Now, for those of you who know me, know that I like to connect in a little bit different way. I like to run up and down mountains and go on my bike up and down mountains, and on occasion I've been led to take part in some activities that are races, we'll call them. They're ridiculous, right? I understand this. And I have a little bit of a competitive edge, which you also know, and so I go into these races and I have my sights set, not on enjoying nature around me, but on, well, I want to make it in the top quarter of the participants. Or maybe in my age group, I should really be in the top 10%, right? I'm a top 10% guy. Well, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. But what I really do like about that, and I even worked at this on my Sabbath rest a few years ago, is that these can indeed become spiritual practices as well, to become deeper connected with the world around us. Well, next week, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and it will have nothing to do with a race, but it will tax me in a way that I have never been taxed before. Next week, I am going to attempt to run the Grand Canyon from the South Rim to the North Rim and then back to the South Rim. And I'm not going to be looking at a clock. The sunset and the sunrise will be my only clocks. And my purpose will be to connect with creation and with these guys. The guy that looks like me but not quite as good looking, a little shorter on the left, is my brother. I hope he's watching today. And the guy on the right is a friend of ours, Chris. We all grew up in Arizona together. Go back to this Arizona indoctrination, right? We were taught that Arizona was good. Well, anyway, we have as our goal just to do it and to connect with one another along the way and to connect with God. And so we're going to do this, and it's going to be a challenge. This is what you can see here is the bulk of what we're doing. Let's see if I can find the pointer on this. So this is where we'll start. This is the South Rim, and depending on which way we take, you know, they say that everything goes up must come down. In this case, it's the exact opposite. Whatever goes down must come up, because we're starting at the top. It's really strange. So we'll go down, and we'll go down here. We'll come back up, and then we'll do it again. And one of the things that I love about this is that you got to kind of go by what the conditions offer you on any particular day. So we might take the one trailhead, we might take the other trailhead. One's a little steeper than the other. But if you give up steepness, of course, you have to gain distance, right? The other thing that I love about this is it's going to test us because when we go, it's you never know what the temperature will be like. We're guessing that the temperatures will swing some 50 or 60 degrees because of those elevation changes. So in the morning when we leave what will be a sunrise, it might look something like this. It's probably going to be in the 30s. And then when we get down to the river, down at the bottom there, you can see it. On the way back, it'll probably be in the 90s. We're hoping that we're not going to see any triple digits. So it's going to be a challenge. We're going to cover 11,000 feet of vertical gain, which means we're going to be walking uphill for 11,000 feet, which also means we're going to be going downhill for another 11,000 feet. And it's going to be great. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. This gives you an idea of kind of some of the terrain, a lot of zigging and zagging, and practice my left turns and my right turns. We are really looking forward to it. So, I'm going to see that creation, is indeed very good. Now, every year, at least once a year, we take a breath in the life of our church to really focus on what it means to be good stewards of God's creation. And as we walked into that time of year, this year, we reminded ourselves that we do this not because we want to, quote unquote, be green, not because it matches whatever political persuasion we might happen to follow, but because it's God's. And because God has gifted this beautiful, miraculous creation. And even though I cringe when I read some of that stuff in Genesis, that we have the power to subdue it, because I don't feel like that's our role, that's what we've done. And so how do we, as responsible stewards, as people who do have the power to alter the earth, how do we work with that? As people of faith, this matters, and it compels us to act. And so as I started to think about this canyon excursion that I'm going on, and I started to think about what we need to do in our everyday lives, in the real world. That's not the real world. In the real world, what do we need to do as people of faith to care for this miraculous planet that God has given us? I started to see some correlations. And there's many things, but I broke it down into about, I think I've got 5. One is that we need to take the first step. Another is that we need to be smart. Keep listening, kids, because this is where I'm counting on you. Another is that we need to rely on one another. We must simplify and reduce. And as people of faith, we must have faith. So what does this mean? Take the first step. That's pretty easy to think about that for the canyon run, right? We need to take the first step. And I like this picture because it almost seems a little apropos. It looks like it's a trail going to nowhere. I trust it bends down the other side of that hill there. But as we think about our role as stewards of this planet, it did seem kind of metaphorically accurate. We're on a path, but are we on a path that will have a steep drop-off? It's said that plant and animal species are going extinct at a rate of 50 to 100 per day. If the earth keeps warming at its current rate, estimates are that by 2050 we could lose 1/4, 25% of the world's species. By the year 2100, we could lose 1/2 of the world's species. It's not just about cute polar bears on floating icebergs, it's about much more than that. It's called the 6th extinction. Climate change, out of control human population growth, pollution, irresponsible development, and many, many more factors are all playing key roles in this destruction. And God sees that it is good. We must take the first step for God's creation. For a lot of us, what that means is we need to get over our skepticism, our apathy, this, oh, what good will it do attitude. How do we do that? We get smart. Thankfully, I don't have to solve a Rubik's Cube to do it, to go into the canyon. But for my canyon run, it's been proper training. My friends and I have put in over 500 miles in preparation for this over the last several months. It means that we're going to need to pace ourselves properly. It means that our nutrition and hydration better keep up. It means that we're going to need to be safe, and it means we're going to need to be smart about what we pack. We're going to need to be able to think as well when things might not go according to plan. For our earth, it means we're going to need to think ever more intelligently about our choices. And these are choices that go way beyond just paper or plastic or reusable. We need to not only work harder, we need to work smarter. It's thought that if we make a reduction, and this is doable, if we really tried, we could make a reduction of 60 to 80% in our greenhouse gases, but that enormous reduction would take a reconfiguration of our transportation, our agriculture, and our household energy use. It would mean that we would need to alter our economic system and attitudes, more importantly, to value conservation over consumption. Being smart means that we will also need to encourage and foster our best and our brightest kids. This is where I'm asking for your help. I would love to see our kids put their talents towards environmental science, engineering, chemistry, biology, ethics, even religion, to make this world a better place. I think we can do it. And I think kids will be the ones, today's children will be the ones who turn it around tomorrow. We're going to need to be smart. And we're going to need to rely on one another. Next week, over 40-some miles, I'm guessing there's going to be times when I'm saying, David, Chris, help me out. I'm dragging here. I need something. I need food. I need water. I need a word of encouragement. When we think about this in terms of caring for creation, we recognize that we have to come across all kinds of divides. And we know that our world and our nation especially has become very divided. You'll be glad to know that people on this issue have been reaching across the aisle and across the ideological spectrum. Even Reverend Ted Haggard, he's a former president of the 30 million member National Association of Evangelicals, he said this, he said, quote, "The environment is a values issue. There are significant and compelling theological reasons why it should be a banner issue for the Christian right. The Christian left could not agree more, and alliances are being formed. We can do this, but we're going to have to do it together." Next, we need to simplify and reduce. You know, when you think about packing, your world changes drastically when you think about carrying it for 40-some miles. This is my pack. This is the stuff that'll be in my pack. It's got water. It's a hydration system, so there's a bladder of water in there. And then there's going to be a whole mess of granola bars and all kinds of stuff that we're going to eat as well. I wonder how we would change our consumption patterns day to day if we really thought about how we might have to carry it all or move it all. And in fact, Jesus even talks about this, right, in the Sermon on the Mount. He talks about how our possessions can weigh us down, how possessions can get in the way of our relationship not only with God, but with other people, and as we're seeing now, in the way of our relationship with the world. Simply said, we need to simplify. We need to reduce. Our planet is being overcome with waste and trash. The average person in the United States uses about, now buckle up, 200 pounds of materials daily for our material and energy consumption. And here for me is a real eye-opener as we think about being people of justice. That's about 60 times as much as the poorest of the world are able to draw on. It takes 20 acres of the world's productive land to support that. Globally, 4.5 acres would be our fair share. If everyone consumed at the rate that we're consuming right now, we would need 4 more planets to be sustainable. I know this isn't how we want to handle God's creation. We have to simplify. We have to reduce. And here's the last. We need to have faith. I might need to have faith to walk. That's an actual picture of the trail on the North Kaibab part of the trail. Don't get lost in the view. You might end up in the bottom. They say that, or Hebrews says that faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not yet seen. And so hearing the grim statistics, recognizing our own desire to consume, acknowledging that the global system will be really hard to change. Again, one could understandably throw their hands up in the air and say, so what? It's useless, maybe even hypocritical for me to try to be green even as I drive and fly. For me, fly 3/4 of the way across the country, spend, heat, eat. But I have faith that we can do it. I have faith that we can turn it around. One of the reasons I have faith is because I live with you all. I'm constantly inspired by what I see in this place. Whether I see you around town biking or walking to reduce your own carbon footprint, whether I see you taking action with your legislators, whether it's the roads starting a regenerative farming community, whether it's Herb and Joanne High, who help us all in this community recycle every single month, whether it's our folks in the front office and our pastors who decided that when E-Town drastically scaled back the recycling program, we know how much paper we generate. We try to be intentional about it, but there's still some paper waste. What are we going to do about it? We made a plan, and we're going to make sure it goes to the right place and not just the landfill or incinerated. I have faith that we can do it. I recognize that at the same time, we also need to get out there and get connected. We need to make sure that we're doing like I mentioned a few minutes ago, that we're taking the time to breathe in creation. That will inspire us. That will connect us. If you're a kid, sign up for Camp Sotara. If you're an adult, volunteer. Anna Lee, where are you? Right there. Look for Anna Lee out in the memorial lobby. You can get signed up for camp today. If you're an adult and you want to volunteer, they're always looking for volunteers for both positions that work with kids but also work behind the scenes. We can also sign up for family camping in June. Those kinds of things are like bringing us back home, reminding us of who God created us to be. In the meantime, we're still talking about how we are created to keep living in the world. We're in the middle of considering a building project. And I want you to know that in those meetings, every step of the way, we have considered the environmental impacts that we will make. One of the reasons the board chose to stay at this site and to renovate and expand here was because we didn't feel good about the possibility of this place being leveled and all the waste that would produce. We didn't feel good about going and finding another piece of probably farmland somewhere and turning that into a building and parking lot. We chose to stay here. It's more complicated. It's more complex. Just ask any of the building improvement committee. But it was important to us to do that. As we do this too, as we put in new windows, as we put in more energy efficient heating and cooling, geothermal, we're hoping to reduce our footprint in significant ways. Friends, we're 1 week removed from Easter. Easter, the ultimate comeback story, the ultimate in hope, the ultimate in for what looks like a bleak situation turning into something different, and we recognize that Jesus was the first step, and then the disciples with God and the Holy Spirit took it from there. I have faith that when it comes to caring for God's creation, we can do exactly the same. I look forward to a time when God is going to look at planet Earth, including humanity, and God will say, yes, it is indeed good.